And we are live. It's the Revved Up 906 podcast, the Detroit Pistons podcast, to be exact. And I'm Hudson.
And I'm Ryan.
And before we get into episode number 15 of the season 2, I want to talk to you, the people, about a few quick things. First off, in today's episode, you are going to be seeing me in a Revved Up 906 polo, and you're going to see Ryan in a Grind Clothing Co. sweatshirt. Well, Grind Clothing Co. is our official merch sponsor, so you can click the link in our YouTube bio or in the description below, and that link will shoot you right to Grind Clothing Co.'s website, where you can check out a bunch of different options for our merch collab with Grind Clothing Co., or you can see their monthly and past months merch drops. They have all kinds of different designs for everybody's different style, whether it's sweatshirts, hats, beanies, shorts, swim trunk, whatever it might be. They got it. So make sure to click that link and rep your favorite Detroit Pistons podcast, Revved Up 906. Maybe even match your boy for a couple weekdays in the Revved Up 906 polo. You just never know. And you got to check out that logo. The logo's fire. I mean, come on. And the designer at Grind Clothing Co. is pretty top notch. So make sure to hit that link in our YouTube bio. Also, if you are not so much into long form content, most of our episodes are around 25 to 35 minutes. If you're not so much into watching that, make sure to still subscribe to our YouTube channel, because almost daily we are posting reels that are around 30 seconds long that are basically highlights of each of our episodes. So make sure to still subscribe. And if you're a little bit more active on Instagram, make sure to go follow us on Instagram. That link is below in the description below. And we are posting game day posts, debate topics, clips, all of the above. So make sure to go follow us on Instagram if you're not so much into watching long form content. Also, if you are looking to collab with Revved Up 906 and you're a part of the Detroit Pistons community, make sure to direct message us on Instagram. We would love to know what several business inquiries might be, or if you are looking to sponsor our podcast, reach out and we would love to work with local Michigan businesses. Without further ado, let's get into episode number 15 of season 2. This week, we're talking about what we love to talk about, and that's trade talk. And we're not so much getting into specifics of players, picks, money compensation, but rather this week we are going to talk about, should the Detroit Pistons trade away their vets? Vets meaning Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks. And to kind of kick off this conversation, Ryan, let's talk about Bojan Bogdanovic first. What are his stats this year? What's he averaging so far?
Well, I don't have the specific numbers. I'd have to pull them
Okay.
up, but I do have what
Okay.
he has done in his tenure with the Pistons so
Yeah.
far. In his tenure with the Pistons, keep in mind that's 2 seasons now. He's averaged 21 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, shooting 48% from the field, 41% from 3, 86% at the line, 2 turnovers, 2 fouls, but darn near perfection. And you compare that to just his career stats, it's significantly better with the Pistons than any other stop he's been at. But you also have to bring that down a notch and say, well, he's been given a ton of playing time compared to his other situations, where you look back when his days in Brooklyn, he really wasn't given that many minutes. Even most notably his days in Utah, he wasn't been given this many minutes. Now in Detroit, he's been given 20 to 25 minutes every single night out there. And he's one of those key role players within this team. And it's evident with his stats, but his stats prove to you that he is playing sound basketball for the Pistons in his 2 years with us so far.
So when we talk about each player, I kind of want to break it down as simply as possible for the viewers. Positives and negatives. Let's start out with the positives of Bojan Bogdanovic and why we should keep him. Reasons why he's shown us these last 1.5 seasons why we should keep him. And I think the biggest thing that's at the top of that list and it's going to be with both of these guys, is the 3-point shooting. It's very consistent, and he does it in bunches. And that's kind of something that the Pistons have struggled with in these last 6 years, really since we drafted Contavious Caldwell-Pope. We've really struggled with that. He kind of helped with that original team, but then like the Pistons just overall as an organization just have never shot the 3-point ball at a high percentage. And then we bring Bojan Bogdanovic in, and he adds a dynamic that the Detroit Pistons haven't had in that much of a volume of 3-pointers made. So Ryan, is that something that stands out to you for reasons to keep Bojan? Because that 3-point shooting can be very beneficial once this Pistons team starts to become a playoff contender.
Yeah, when you think about it, if you take away Bojan Bogdanovic and then even Alec Burks, you take away Mike Muscala and Danilo Gallinari, who we just traded for. Yeah. You take away all these vets that can shoot. This team can't shoot. That was what the consensus was going into the season, is that, okay, we acquired Joe Harris, we acquired Monte Morris, we are bringing in these players that can shoot the 3-ball. You go back to when we acquired Bojan Bogdanovic in that trade, that sent Kelly Olynyk and others to Utah. And we look at that and go, we just added the 3-point shooter. That's something we desperately needed. And then Bojan came out splashing and dashing. And then go into the most recent trades and what we've acquired with guys that can shoot the 3. It's an added bonus. Because if you really take away these vets, no disrespect to any of our guys, but Jaden Ivey, not a great 3-point shooter. He's getting better, but he's not a great 3-point shooter. Cade Cunningham, not a great 3-point shooter. Obviously, you're not going to have Duren pulling up from 3. I think he could make it, but that's not a great choice. Stu has developed a 3-point shot, but that's the big word, has developed. He never had a 3-point shot before, but now he has one, and that's much needed. But you look at down the list of the guys on our team, there's not a lot of great 3-point shooters or shooters in general. Guys that can just go in, give you a bucket at any minute. And that's what Bojan Bogdanovic brings to this team. That's what Alec Burks brings to this team. They add scoring. And not saying that Cade Cunningham and all these guys can't score, but these guys score at a higher level because that's literally what their job is. Their job is to score the ball. Whereas Jaden Ivey, you want him to dish out some dimes from time to time. You want Cade facilitating and not just looking for his shot. You want all these guys to do a bunch of different things, but you need to have guys around you that can shoot the ball, and that's what Bojan Bogdanovic brings on a nightly basis. Heck, the run he's been on the last couple of nights out, dropping darn near 30 points every single night, that's something we need, because like we won without Cade Cunningham the other night, with Monte Morris back, with all these guys that we added in that can shoot the ball. And if it weren't for them, like, that game probably wouldn't have been won. So these guys, what they bring in the dynamic of scoring the ball is a huge lift, and it takes a lot of pressure off of the other young guys on this team, off Cade's shoulders, off Ivey's shoulders.
I think my next point for positives is the professionalism behind the scenes. And I think it goes for both Bojan and Alec Burks. But that's another reason why I like keeping these vets around the Detroit Pistons, because we know that our young core is very young. Jalen Duren's only 20, Cade Cunningham 22, Jaden Ivey 22, Isaiah Stewart 23. I mean, these are young guys making millions of dollars, traveling the country, and it's good to keep professional guys that aren't going out clubbing at 11 o'clock at night on a Tuesday. They're setting a good tone for this Pistons organization. And I like having that around the Detroit Pistons because, yes, it's not something you can see in statistics. It's not something you can break down with graphs and charts and all of these things. And you can't say, well, this is why they're losing this or this is why they're winning this. You can't pinpoint that, but it's just kind of something that goes unsaid. And that's why, like, sometimes when people are talking about that kind of aspect, they're like, well, Hudson, you can't prove that. You can't do this. But you have to imagine a European guy like Bojan Bogdanovic, his brother is an assistant coach or a physical therapist or something for the for the Drive, the G League team for the Pistons. This is a guy that's totally engulfed in this basketball community and totally just a basketball head. And so I really like having that on the Detroit Pistons team. And then, of course, Alec Burks has been in the league for around 10 years now. So that's kind of something that I've said that before in the past about Bojan and Alec. But for me, it just means a lot having that around our young core.
Yeah, when you have guys that, well, first off, they've never won a championship, either of them. So they're hungry. That's the big thing. And when when you combine hunger and you combine a work ethic and the fact of what their drive is, what their motivation is to a young team, that they're like, hey, we want to win and we want you to win with us. So we're going to bring you alongside, be our little sidekicks. We're going to mentor you. That's a great thing in my eyes. Because again, I mean, I'm going to say it, the Lions, you have guys like Alex Anzalone and others who are hungry. They haven't won in their career, really. And so when you have a group of guys that are older, that bring up these young bucks, it really adds a whole dynamic to the concept of a team. And any successful team, there is veterans present, and they are the determining factor, most likely, and if you win or lose. Because you look at, I always bring up the Miami Heat as an example. You look at how much depth of veterans they've had over the last couple of years, but then all time, it speaks volumes to what a veteran can do to your team. Like Udonis Haslem, he is one of the, in my eyes, one of the greatest role players in NBA history. And just in the sense of what he can bring to a team mentally and verbally, not necessarily what he can do on the court, but what can he do behind the scenes that goes unseen, goes unheard of, that really brings and connects a team. Because those guys do matter. Like Rodney McGruder, he rode the bench, but he was one of those guys that would call somebody out in the locker room and be like, hey, you got to be better than that. I know I can't do what you do, but you need to improve on that. And so these guys that just know how to communicate with the teams and just lead, that's what helps win games. And that's what Bojan Bogdanovic helps with. That's what Alec Burks brings to the table. Because you look at all these games and you're watching them and you're seeing Bojan in the huddle going like, hey, you need to be doing that. Or like walking off the court during a timeout, talking to these young guys. Like that goes unnoticed and unseen all the time. And it's something that I agree with you is a very big benefit to this young team.
So when discussing the negatives of Bojan Bogdanovic, one of the first things that comes to my mind is for most small forwards, so the 3 position or the 4 position, you typically want them to be rock solid defenders, not where they're these uber athletic, they're getting 2 steals a game or whatever it might be. I'm not saying that. You just want them to be consistently good on the defensive end, be able to hold their own. And Bojan Bogdanovic, that's where it kind of gets rocky for me, because we always say, we always kind of poke fun at James Harden, how he has those lazy fouls. Well, Bojan can have that at times too. And so when talking about negatives of this vetted Bojan Bogdanovic, I think the biggest thing is his defense can be very rough, especially when he's going up against the league's premier young players at the 3 and 4 position. And he's not really good on the pick and roll, defending the pick and roll rather, and on those quick switches or getting back in transition on the defensive end. And I think for the Pistons to succeed, there's a reason why they picked up Asard Thompson in the draft this year, is because they wanted to go all out for a defensive player, because they know if this organization is going to take the next step, defense is going to be at its core. And that's just not Bojan's core. We just talked about it. He thrives at the 3-point line and finding his own shot. So that's when the discussion comes in of how do we address this defensive issue? Because the Pistons have proven they can keep up offensively with most NBA teams. It's in the late stretches of games where the older vets start getting a little extra tired, breathing a little heavier. Their defense starts to get sloppy. So that's the first thing that pops into my head of like, okay, if there's a reason to trade away Bojan Bogdanovic, it's really the defense.
Yeah, his defense isn't spectacular, as you've noted. But that's one of the things that I actually have seen improvement on. And I know we're talking about negatives, and that is a big negative. But when you look back at the beginning of the season to where we are now, Bojan Bogdanovic is playing much better defense, much more sound defense than he was initially. Even look back to last year. His defense right now is much drastically better. But it's still not great. That is one of the things he struggles with. And you look back in the last couple of games here on the rotations, what guys are out there in certain situations, certain crucial moments. And Monty always seems to throw Asar Thompson out there lately in the late game situations while Bojan is on the court too. And that's something that it's kind of, you got to make note of, because as you've mentioned, Bojan is not great on defense. That's why we brought in Asar Thompson. And to see those two guys out there on the court together shows you not only does Monty want offense, but he needs defense too. And so bringing Asar out there, honestly, I think it actually helps Bojan in filling the lanes a little bit more, because he can go and guard up against the slower guy, match him up. Asar Thompson takes the stud. There's no speed issue whatsoever. Bojan Bogdanovic, example, gets matched up. Not saying I want him matched up on Kristaps Porzingis, but he's a little bit slower on that side of the ball. So you have a guy in Kristaps Porzingis. Now, the height is a big issue, but the note to be here is you want Bojan out there at all times because of the offense he can bring you. His defense is shaky. If Asar Thompson struggles with fouls, which he does severely, isn't on the court with him, he struggles a lot more. But I really think it's all about the dynamic of the guys you have out there that could either propel or, I guess you could say, deplete Bojan Bogdanovic in his defensive play. If you have the right guys out there, good things will happen with Bojan. He can use his high basketball IQ. But if you don't have the right guys out there, I really think his defense, it shows how bad he is on that side of the ball. But yeah, that's a big negative for Bojan Bogdanovic, and that could be a reason as to why he's traded. But I think his offensive ability is just so good to the point where I don't care that he's that bad on defense. I'd rather have him just because of the offense.
Right. No, I do agree with that point, that when Bojan's on and he's getting 23 a game, I don't mind if he gives up a certain amount of points, as long as it's not 50 or something outrageous. But I think that if he's doing well offensively, I think the defense can kind of waver. I don't mind that. It's when the Pistons are down 25 and Bojan's having these lazy fouls is when it's like, oh, Bojan, what's the point, man? Like, like get your head out of the gutter, that. And we do see that at times. The Pistons are playing very well as of late, but we can't forget about those 20-point losses that, we were dealing with just a couple weeks ago. So that's my biggest thing is I do agree, though. His offense kind of makes up for it at times, for sure. In the past, some of the negatives I brought up about Bojan was taking a lot of shots. And if he would work well with Cade, we were talking about that all last season. And I'm not really worried about that as much as I was last season. It's not as big of an issue as I maybe made it to be in my head now that we've seen Cade and Bojan kind of have 20 and more games together. So, Ryan, when addressing any negatives that might come along with keeping Bojan, is there anything that comes to mind? Because a lot of some of the negatives I once would have thought of just aren't really much of a factor as I thought they were going to be.
The only negative that I can possibly think of outside of the defense is his age. That's the only negative.
Oh, yeah.
He's sitting at 35 years old. If you look back last year at the end of the season, he signed the extension for a 3-year deal. That is probably going to put him around 38 years old when it's all said and done, and that's too old. Bojan Bogdanovic, obviously right now, is playing pretty darn near perfect in terms of basketball. And just his offensive ability alone, like the fact he's averaging 22, 23 points right now for us is not bad at all. I'm not complaining whatsoever. But then you think about it, he's 35, and not everybody can play for 20 years in the league. Um, there's a select few. Obviously, when you think of the GOAT conversation, you think of LeBron, where he's at right now in his 40s, playing all-star level basketball. You look at my example earlier of Udonis Haslem. Haslem didn't see the floor for the last 3-4 years of his career. He really was just riding on the bench and being a morale guy. That was his role. So Bojan Bogdanovic sitting at 35 years old, it is a little worrisome given the fact that he's playing this great right now at his age, but what's to come the next couple of years? Because obviously, as soon as you get older, you start slowing down, you become weaker in certain aspects of your body where you can get injured more so than you usually would have. So that's only my concern is his age. But outside of that, I think what his ability can be for this team, the way he's playing right now, but then even let's say next year, he's still playing at this level. I have no worries whatsoever. But his age, to me, it's a little worrisome given the fact that he is that old already. But outside of that, I love having Bojan around.
So we talked about the positives and negatives that come with keeping or trading away Bojan and what that looks like. So Ryan, you are sitting at Troy Weaver's desk in Henry Ford's system. You are Troy Weaver for a day, and you are thinking about, who could I trade away to make a do you trade Bojan? Let's get to the point. Do you trade Bojan? What are your thoughts on Bojan? Because the trade deadline is coming very, very soon. It's not that far away. What are you doing? And with Bojan, the surroundings of Bojan?
Well, he still has a year or so left on his contract, which is great because that means if you do keep him, you don't have to make a decision right away on what you do with him going forward. So with that being said, most likely the teams that are going to be making calls for Bojan potentially are contending teams. That's going to be like the likes of the Los Angeles Lakers. They're not playing great basketball right now, but they could definitely use him. Like you look at the New York Knicks, I think the Knicks are overrated, but they could be looking. There's a couple different teams that you could throw into that category. And you look at their rosters, the way they're built, and then you look at their draft assets in terms of capital. What are their picks? How good could they be? And when it's all said and done, I'm not trading Bojan Bogdanovic because the Pistons have publicly said they want a first-round pick and a good quality player in return for Bojan Bogdanovic. And when you look at those teams as an example, like the Lakers, do they have a couple good younger players? Yeah, sure. But there's a reason why they'd be trading them. They don't either A, they don't believe in them going forward, or B, they don't really see the value in keeping them, which is pretty much the same thing. I don't know why. You get what I'm saying. The point is, these teams that would be trading for him, they don't have the draft capital. These picks that we would be getting are late first-round picks, and you don't know exactly where they're going to land, but they're not going to be in the lottery. And then on top of that, the good quality player that you could be getting is probably going to be in the age demographic of a Bojan Bogdanovic, or even a slightly younger player that isn't a stud, but could give you solid minutes. And so when it's all said and done, again, I'm not moving Bojan Bogdanovic. I think you hold on to him, see what he gives you for the rest of the season, and then make a decision in the offseason. Because if his play stays to the level that it's at right now, you can still move him when it's all said and done in the offseason.
As far as my answer, if I trade away Bojan Bogdanovic or not, I have an analogy. And it's comparing a car to Bojan Bogdanovic. Because as soon as you buy that brand new car, as soon as you drive out that parking lot of the dealership, the price and value goes down. And the longer and longer you put miles on it and the years go by and it gets older and older, the price of and the value of that car keeps going down and down and down. And Bojan's been in the league for a little bit. So if you have the decision to, okay, I'm going to sell this car right away so then I can get as much money for it as possible, and then I can get a little bit nicer of a car that will last me a couple more years. That's the way I kind of look at this Bojan situation, because I don't know if it's the perfect decision to trade him away, just because it is a gamble. When you are trading away players, it is a gamble. You don't know what's going to pan out, how it's going to work. You don't know. You just can hope and pray. So overall, I agree with you, Ryan. I don't know if we can get enough for him as we would want. You know, we might get a late first round pick for him, and then we're a little disappointed because we make the wrong pick. But I know right now has the most value that he's ever going to have in the rest of his career right now. And he's playing a great brand of basketball. So I think if you're going to trade him, do it now or hold on to him. I'm fine with either one. I guess explaining all that, I'm fine with either one. You know, I wouldn't be butthurt if we traded him away. I wouldn't be butthurt if we rode him out the rest of the season. You know, it is what it is. He's playing well, but I also know if we want a first round pick, any kind of a first round pick, whether it's late, middle, it's going to have to be now, because I don't know if he's going to be worth that if he starts the season out rough because his body aged over summer. You know, I just don't know. So he could be in a Danilo Gallinari situation early next year. You just don't know. They're right around at the same age, so it's hard to say. Let's talk about this next vet, Alec Burks, and talk about the positives and negatives of him and whether we should trade him away or not. Also, make sure if you're watching to comment below if you would trade away Bojan Bogdanovic, if there's any other positives or negatives you thought of while you were watching. Make sure to comment below. We would love to know what you guys are thinking. But Ryan, when talking about Alec Burks, let's start out with some positives. Obviously, we mentioned the first big one, and that's the three-point shooting. He's an absolute scorcher from the three-point line. Any other positives that come to mind first?
I guess you could say a spark plug. He is one of those electrifying players for our team where you need a bucket, he's going to give you a bucket. It doesn't matter when his number is called. It could be the beginning of the game, be the end of the game in crunch time and crucial minutes. He's that guy for you. Without the three-point shot, his mid-range, oh my goodness, it is top-notch. His ability to finish around the rim when needed to, top-notch. Like, he's a high-class role player. And the fact that you can use him at any given time in whatever capacity it may be, maybe he's just going out there to facilitate, or maybe he's just going out there to score. You can have him in any which way you want him to, and he's happy. Like, you see him smiling all the time, even if we're losing, which, I mean, yeah, you shouldn't be smiling after a loss. But still, the point is, like, he's one of those spark plug guys, one of the guys that brings you energy, and a high energy player mixed with a guy that has probably one of the best three-point shots on the team. The two combinations right there, man, I'm happy with Alec Burks. And
absolutely,
just being an energy guy and having a three-point shot, that is crucial for this team.
Yeah, I completely agree. There is a laundry list of positives for Alec Burks. And another huge positive is actually a player he is playing along next to, which is Monte Morris, because I think they are a great duo coming off the bench for this Detroit Pistons team. And I think keeping Alec Burks is an asset because Monte Morris has shown that he can facilitate an offense like a true vet. And Alec Burks, rather, is going to make Monte Morris's job that much easier because Alec Burks does all the right things on the offensive end. So I agree. There's a huge list of positives, and one of those is being an absolute spark plug off the bench for the Detroit Pistons. Ryan, I'm trying to think of negatives for Alec Burks. I guess I don't really know many negatives for him. I mean, he's not the best defensively, but he's fairly savvy. He's not the best passer, but he can work within an offense. He doesn't necessarily have to be a good passer because he's got Killian Hayes and Monte Morris next to him and Marcus Sasser. Is there anything that kind of pops into mind as far as negatives?
Honestly, I really can't think of a negative because every single time on the court, I'm happy. Like it, I love that Alec Burks is on the court. Well, okay, here. A negative is him being on the bench. That's a negative. Uh,
I like
because
that.
the way we use him, he just, again, energy as a 3-point shot. His offense is superb. His defense is better than Bojan Bogdanovic, as we mentioned earlier. So having him on the bench kind of hurts us at times because you know for a fact if he's out there, he's giving you a bucket or two every single time.
Oh yeah.
So I guess to me that's the negative, is having him on the bench.
No, yeah, I like that a lot. That's pretty cool. So Ryan, as far as trading away Alec Burks, you're a no?
Yeah, I'm a no. What's being reported as what the Pistons would be asking for him is multiple second round picks, and a quality player. And I don't. To me, granted, second round picks today are utilized much differently than what they ever were. Just because you can get a good quality player in the second round nowadays. They're not going to be elite or anything, but you can develop them into something special. Like think of like it, there's a laundry list of guys you could say, but the point is they could be valuable, they couldn't be valuable. It's just up in the air. It's more of a 50-50 in the second round than the first round. And then you think of the good quality player that you could bring in. I don't know of a team like Bojan Bogdanovic, as we mentioned earlier. I don't know if there's a team that could give us a good quality player in multiple second round picks for Alec Burks. I think we can bring him back in the offseason because his contract is expiring. He'll be an unrestricted free agent at the season end. So I think we can bring him back, and I want him back. So with that being said, if I want him back at the end of the season, no, I don't think we should trade him.
No, yeah, I'm right there with you. I think we should keep him. I don't think Alec Burks should leave anytime soon. And you know what? I think he likes being in Detroit, and that says a lot. We've had a lot of Pistons players that we've traded for over the years that were in the older stages of their career, and you could just kind of tell they didn't want to be here. And Tracy McGrady. And so there's just been multiple guys that were like that. There's no hate. It's nice to have guys that like being in Detroit, like the culture, like the coaches and all the above. And I think Alec Burks is one of those guys. And I agree with you. I see the Pistons picking him up in free agency and not letting him leave. At least it would be smart for him to have some continuity and some a roster that's put together for a couple of years. I mean, this Pistons roster has been in refolding and reshifting every offseason. It'd be nice to have some consistency on the roster for the next couple of years. And I think Alec Burks is going to be a big part of that.
And I will say this, my one note before we end this all in this conversation is that you look, and I always like throwing the Lions as a reference because I mean I love my Lions. I won't go into that tangent. I'm happy where they ended. That's it. I mean, Super Bowl, oh my goodness, but I'm happy with their season. That's not the point. The point is, you look at that team, you look at what Brad Holmes did for that organization this past offseason in the draft they had. Who's to say the Pistons couldn't be in that situation? Because you look at this roster, you have Cade Cunningham and all this talent. We could probably be a good quality draft away from at least being a playoff team. And so if you have a chance to keep and hold on to Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks, potentially for a couple more years in their high-end play that they are at right now, I think they can win.
That will do it for episode number 15 of season 2. We talked about if we should trade the vets of the Detroit Pistons, and we focused in on Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks. We talked about the positives, the negatives of what they offer to the Pistons organization. And in the end, we pretty much decided that don't trade them. Overall, just don't trade them. I mean, keep our vets. They are such great vets. They are premier NBA players that are in their late 30s. And luckily, the Pistons have 2 of them. So I think we're pretty happy with that. We will see you guys in the next Revved Up episode number 16. Peace.